They ignored my son to death. Junior high, started to struggle with depression and started using drugs. I felt like we could force him into treatment, and that didn't work. The rumors going around in the small town where he grew up, there was very real stigma. When he was remanded, my hope was at the highest. He was ready. He wanted some medication, speak with the psychologist, and they ignored him. On January the 11th, 2021, he had passed away. It took everything in me to just want to stay alive. I am on a mission to make sure something good comes of this.
All right, what's up, everybody? That was tonight's guest, Lana Greene. My name is Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knocks Talks, coming at you from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Treaty Number 6 territory, and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. Before we bring Lana in, I just want to let our viewers and listeners know to stick around to the end to catch a sneak peek from a powerful conversation we had with next week's guest. So stick around to the end to check that out. And for now, let's bring in Lana. Lana, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I know that you're nervous, and that's cool. I just want to let you know something that's going to probably ease your nerves a little bit. I forgot to put my notes on screen. So I have your notes, the notes that we did from last week. I have all of those, but the notes that I'm supposed to be reading for the sponsors and stuff like that, I'm going to have to wing that because I didn't put it on screen. So I have done the wrong thing. The big mistake has been made. So is there anything that you would like to say before we get started?
I just want to say thank you to you and Donna both for having me on, and especially on such a significant day, and a happy Mother's Day to everybody out there watching.
All right. Well, without further ado then, let's jump in.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
Okay, before we get started, I just want to let our viewers and listeners know that tonight's live production is premier sponsored by Stronger Together Canada, peer-led support groups by Mums Stop the Harm, and the FASD network of Saskatchewan, and we are going to hear a bit more about both of those organizations in just a little while. But for now, Lana, so we started out with the intro there, and in that intro, you touched briefly on a number of things, and one of them was tragically you lost your son while he was incarcerated to an alleged suicide. Why don't you tell us a little bit about why he went in?
So he was arrested on what I believe is a mischief charge on September the 3rd, 2020. He was in Edmonton, Alberta, and so he was put into remand, awaiting to face some charges from the previous March, some theft charges.
So
yeah.
Now he'd been struggling with substances for some time by this point, and we'll go back and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But tell us what the conversation sounded like after he went in. Now, from what I understand, you had contact with him. You were speaking with him regularly, correct?
Yeah. TJ, my son's name was TJ. It was he called me very regularly, and so I think it was September 4th or 5th he phoned. I know that at the time of his arrest he was under the influence, and he didn't really know what was going on. He knew he had been arrested, obviously, but he didn't know why or how long he was going to be there. And so he had just phoned briefly to let me know he was there, and then he was phoning sort of every day just giving me updates as he was finding things out.
Hmm. And what were some of those updates now? When we spoke before, you had mentioned that
Yeah.
he was seeking help. Did that start happening right away? Like as soon as he went in, did he start like, okay, something's got to change? Was he seeking professional services, medication? Like, how did that progress?
Well, he was seeking a treatment bed, I would say the year leading up to the being remanded.
Mm,
Several times he filled out the forms. He took himself to detox, where he was allowed to stay 8 days. And
mhm,
then just we were always met with waiting times of 6 to 8 weeks, or just flat out, we don't have a bed and we're not taking people right now
mm,
due to COVID.
mhm,
And so when he first got into the remand, he I'd say one of his first phone calls was he was having a lot of memories that he wasn't really sure what was real and what wasn't, because he was coming off of drugs. And so we were
mhm.
just talking a lot about, he's like, Mom, did this happen? Did that happen? And talking through that. Yeah. I
Yeah.
know he started asking them um, probably in October. Yeah.
Mhm,
I think it started to sink in, like, I'm staying here for a little while. So
mhm.
yeah.
So this wasn't something that like this wasn't like a wake up call for him being incarcerated. This was something that he was actively seeking before he went in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He, yeah.
And so he would get in and he would get into detox, and they knew full well they did not have an aftercare plan for him or anything. They would just dry him out for 8 days and have a nice day.
Yeah. I know that in July, he made his way to Edmonton in August, and in July he stayed 8 days in the detox center. And yeah, there literally was no bed for him to move into.
Hmm.
And then he he had asked them to do an actual assessment on him. So I think that was part of getting access to a bed, was to go through that assessment. And they said that they found that he also needed mental health treatment, and that is there's that's more complex. So he would need to go to another facility where they deal with both.
You know, I always get to shake my head when people say like I'm not sure that like does addiction happen without mental health challenges? Like is that even a thing? You know? So I
I feel like they go hand in hand, and
yeah.
and for me, I feel like it was the mental illness that he was trying to self medicate. That's
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So tell us a little more then. Once he was incarcerated, you were talking with him. It seemed as though things were starting to make sense to both him and you, by the sounds of things. Um, was there a point that it sounded like he gave up hope?
Yeah. Yeah, there was I was trying to piece together sort of, because we were talking very regular, and he started telling me, I'd say early October, he was asking.
Hmm.
I by that time had stopped sort of. I didn't want to push him to do anything, so I was just listening. And he told me, hey, I asked for um, medication and to talk to a psychologist, which was huge because
Hmm.
he previously wasn't very open to speaking with a psychologist. So
Hmm.
I was really hopeful. I knew that due to COVID, probably waiting times were longer, but I just kept encouraging him. I would check in with him, like, have they let you know? And he just would say, no, Mom.
Hmm.
But I know in November there was about a 30-day span where he didn't shower. So
Hmm.
we were talking about that, like he was really depressed. And
Mm-hmm.
There was one week where he hadn't called me at all, and he said, "I'm sorry I haven't called you. I couldn't come out of my cell. Even when they opened the door, he said, all the guys in here think I'm weird because I won't come out." But
Mm-hmm.
it was just that I think that's probably a low point where he had lost some hope.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever try to reach out to the prison on his behalf? Like, did you
If
ever try to figure out what was going on, or if there was any way you could help or anything?
um, I'm laughing because I was really trying to catch up to speed. Of course, TJ had never been in jail. He had never served time. And a
Mm-hmm.
remand facility is building where you're waiting trial. So this was all pretty new. And um, I was trying to understand what he was going through so I could communicate better with him.
Mm-hmm.
And, sorry, I forgot what you asked me.
Well, it's a heavy topic. It really is.
It
But
is.
so what I'm curious about is like, was there ever any opportunity for you to interact with the remand
Yeah.
facility?
Had I reached out. So I started doing a lot of research about
Mm-hmm.
where is my son. So I'm Googling this place and I started reading some pretty terrible stuff. So I knew where he was. I kind of had that feeling that phoning and advocating would probably cause him some more problems in there. So I chose to not do that.
Mm-hmm. You mean from
Because
like from the staff? You mean they would start treating him poorly because you were making noise?
yeah, I felt like that from what I seen online about,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I started to be concerned that if somebody's mom was phoning in to make sure they were being treated, that maybe the opposite would happen, was my
Mm-hmm.
feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I've definitely, along through his journey, I was really trying to be involved and advocate, and I'd say even trying to control the situation. And
Yeah.
I just, it never worked. It never went well when I did that. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
chose to not.
speaking of attempts to control, let's go back for a moment. Now, early on, when he first started experimenting with substances, you went to court and you got a PCHAD. Now, before we go into what that was like, what can you tell us what a PCHAD is?
It's a court ordered, um, I think, like assessment and court ordered treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Before you're 18, I had found out that once you're 18, there's just nothing you can do to advocate for your child. And so, um, yeah,
Mm-hmm. So you
I
did that. I mean, with the best of tensions. I'm certainly not pointing
yeah,
fingers or casting judgment. I mean, if I were in that same situation, and like I'm a believer that sometimes, in certain situations. Now, please, nobody like don't crucify me here, because like I know there's some hot stuff going on in Alberta right now, and in fact, Earl Thiessen here is bringing some awareness to that, and we'll talk about that in a minute, Earl. In fact, we're going to talk about it right now. Um, I kind of believe that in certain circumstances, there may be some benefit to removing people from their ability to make decisions to continue harming themselves, you know? So,
right,
yeah,
yeah,
and then not for everybody. And, like you don't get caught with a joint and get forced into treatment. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what was that like for you? Like, did you, when you were successful in getting that, like when the judge said, yes, let's do this, like, did you feel a sense of relief? Did you feel hopeful in that moment?
back then I believed that, yeah, involving authority figures would help.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I would say that was a complete move out of desperation
Mm-hmm.
of trying to
control the situation, and it very much backfired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I thought if we could involve more people that maybe knew a little bit more about what was happening, that would be a good thing.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Let's take a quick break. Hear a word from one of tonight's sponsors, and then we're going to look at some comments. We got some good ones coming in. So hold tight, have a drink. We'll be right back.
We've watched our children walk away. We've felt hopeless, powerless. We are moms, stop the harm. We are not hopeless. We are not powerless. Stronger Together Canada is a national network of peer-led support groups to help navigate these challenges. If you're coping with a child's substance use, reach out to www.holdinghopecanada.org. If you've lost a child to drug poisoning or overdose, www.healingheartscanada.org. We're here to help, and we are stronger together.
All right. Let us look at some comments. Thank you for all the engagement tonight, everyone. Thank you for all the comments. Let's see who we've got here. Ooh. And there's Donna.
So our first comment coming in from Crystal Talley, undefeated mindset coach. Thank you for your comment. Says, so tough fighting for our kids in prison. In addition, for him being wrapped in prison.
Let's see. What else do we got here? I put too many in the queue, and now I can't sort them all out.
Kathy Janess says, glad to be here and so sorry, Lana, for your sad loss. And before we go on to the next comment, I just want to draw attention to, and I don't know if this is something that means like any significance to you, Lana, but we have a few people specifically just sending like one heart, and maybe they're friends of yours to let you know that they're here.
Oh, maybe.
But there's an April Cunningham, Tracy Kelso, Krista Drury, and Nis Yock. Or Yoke. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I've never seen that happen before. So I thought there might be some significance to it. So I thought it, best to point it out.
Well, and
thank you.
Speaking of that, we've got Tasha. I'm gonna
yes, Tasha Caldell says, hugs, we are here. And Ann Street says, here for you, Lana.
So we've got Tommy in the chat.
Tommy says, I'm so sorry for your loss. As a mental health and addiction therapist, I work hard to help everyone that I can.
I think we're going to finish off this segment here with Earl's question. Earl, thanks for the question tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So Earl's question was, what are people's thoughts on parents being able to have their children over 18 mandated to treatment?
Well, I've already sort of expressed my opinion on it. What's yours?
There are so many variables in that. I think it's very discretionary. I don't think there's a clear-cut answer to that.
Very safe answer.
Well, I mean, when I look back on like my situation, I was definitely over 18, and I think that given the circumstances that I was in, it probably would have served me well, and it would have kept me safer. However, not everybody are in those circumstances, so
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. That's where it should be discretionary to a certain extent. And where the line should be drawn, I don't know, man. I am not a lawmaker. All I know is my own personal experience. And like people, not unlike Tommy in the chat here tonight, he was on a few weeks ago and he said, like, yeah, that's what I needed at the time. He got locked up and that's where he found his way. And I've heard that story a lot. Now, could the service be better? Yes, I think the service could totally be better. Should people with these mental health challenges be locked up and then, credit be given to the justice system because they found their clarity there when they could be mandated to somewhere that is more appropriate, like a treatment center or something? So all I'm saying is it's definitely not black and white. Now, crucify me if you want, but I said what I said. Lana, what do you think? With your experiences being what they were, what do you think about that?
And I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about it. Depends what day you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
For my son, that backfired every time. Like
Yeah.
the forceful treatment wasn't a good idea. Um, I do think this isn't a criminal justice issue, though. I don't think he
Mm-hmm.
belonged where he was. I
Mm-hmm.
think we're missing a place where we have a compassionate, evidence-based approach to treatment.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just my own feeling. I think definitely there needs to be a spotlight, and this is what I've been trying to do, is just shine a big light in on specifically the new Edmonton remand facility where TJ was.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I'm learning with connecting with all kinds of families is it's sort of a Canada-wide problem in a lot of facilities, is
Mm-hmm.
the lack of access um, in a critical time frame. People need to have that door open when they're knocking on it
Mm-hmm.
within a few days, not weeks or
And
months.
and I agree with what you're saying there, because with my own personal experiences, like those of us that struggle with substances, we're an impulsive bunch. When we want something, we want it now, and perhaps that's part of what led us down that path in the first place. But you're right, that should be taken advantage of. So when someone gets that 5 seconds or 10 minutes of clarity or whatever and reaches out for help, and they're met with come back in 6 to 8 weeks, I mean that's oftentimes proving to be a bit of a death sentence. So
Yeah.
we've got a couple of comments here. Actually, I want to look at a couple of these comments before we get too far away from the topic here. We've got one from Angela Voss.
I feel like I'm adding a couple, and I can hear you clicking, maybe removing them, because there's like so many. It's this question has really sparked a conversation in the chat, and we cannot unfortunately acknowledge all of them because it would just kind of take over.
Mm,
So, anyways, so Angela Voss says, I disagree. It builds resentment and more trauma with less people to trust, leaving people back to the cycle of addiction.
mm-hmm. And Deborah here, we want to talk about this one.
Deborah Brock says, I had this done to me. I had and sometimes still have a huge amount of resentments. The experience was terrifying, but I am clean and sober going on 2 years. So I'm grateful for that. Still don't think it should be allowed.
Mm.
Good perspective.
Yeah, and fair opinions. I
Mm-hmm.
can't disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to say Angela is actually a fellow Mom Stop the Harm mom who also lost her son in a facility out in Ontario. And
so sorry.
What she just said is so true. That resentment, every time I tried to force something or involved the authorities in any way, for my intention was coming with love and trying to help.
Mm-hmm.
But it often broke the trust that we had, and I had to work really hard, and it was like one step forward and eight back, because you just did that. Now I'm not going to talk to you for a while. So that's true.
Was there ever any time where he had come, like where he had started to understand that you were taking these actions to help? Like, was there ever any moment of clarity there where he
Oh
said,
yeah.
Mama, I get it. Like, I get why you did that.
His words were, I know you think you're helping, but what I need is this. And so essentially, once I call it a point where I surrendered. It was like, clearly I don't know everything. I don't know anything about this. And he was very much teaching me, in a sense, about it, while I was going through trying to understand and yeah, encourage but not control.
Yeah. So did you ever find any ways where it, like speaking of that, encouraging, not controlling, did you ever have any success, like albeit not like permanently successful, but were there ever times where you took certain actions or said certain things that you experienced breakthroughs with him?
I found just when I would just stop trying to push my agenda of getting better and getting off of these drugs, and
Mm-hmm.
if we could just talk about other things, then he would come around to that,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, before we get away from it, so you had the peach ad done, and then he went into treatment, and you told us a bit of a story about what that looked like after. Now, when he was mandated into treatment, right? Now, was that a 28-day
Yeah.
program?
Yeah, I believe it was about 3 weeks in
Mm-hmm.
Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was it. He was just mandated to that one treatment, and then he was just, there you go, he's back, dried out.
Yeah.
What did that look like?
He came home and packed his bags and left that day. he
Mm-hmm.
was he was mad with me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, in fact, he met um, some other kids that were sort of in the same situation, well, in very much the same situation as him, and they made a plan to, whatever they were going to do. And so, yeah, he came and packed his bags and away he went back with them.
With
So
this, so they were also mandated into that facility as well.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So that
And
it just totally backfired.
and then he ended up getting in deeper.
He got in a little bit of trouble. It was a learning, I think, for him, because I would say he was pretty naive. He
Mm-hmm.
grew up in a small town in northern Alberta, and there he was. I threw him in the big city of Edmonton in the treatment center, and there was all kinds of kids in there that were mixed up in gangs and things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I feel like that was probably the worst thing I could have done
Yeah.
looking back. Yeah.
How long was it from the time that happened, where he came home and packed his bag? How much time went by before he actually got incarcerated and the things
So
happened?
this time he would have been it was the summer in between grade 10 and 11, so about 15, 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that him coming home and packing his bags and going back to Edmonton, I think that lasted 3 days before they were caught doing some sort of mischief. And I think I was telling you about that. My approach to that was that I would help him sort of answer for that in the way that I would get him to his. He had to go to some court dates, and he needed a lawyer, which he paid for, and I just sort of looked at it as further learning. Okay, you screwed up,
Mm-hmm.
and he answered for it, and then yeah, he kind of, his take on it was like, okay, that was not smart, I'm not gonna, and kind of got him back on track, and he got into grade 11, and he was back in hockey, and he was, you know um, staying away from the hard drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, we were talking pretty openly about it, and it was like, I kind of said, we can look at it like you've got this out of your system early. You've
Mm-hmm.
learned some hard lessons very young, and
Yeah.
look at you, you've come out the other side. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was going to be the end of it, but yeah.
So, did the hockey and the stability help?
you know that's what my thought was,
Mm-hmm.
but he I believe his depression and his mental illness, the bipolar disorder, He would go into states of mania, and his brain was very much telling him that nobody likes me. He wasn't enjoying the things he used to enjoy. So it was a hard time because I don't think he understood it, and I certainly didn't either. We were trying to. He went from this, yeah.
It's so. You mentioned he was off for a while, and we're gonna move forward again here in just a minute. But I want to try to help people understand what the experience was like. You said that he was off hard drugs for a while. He got into hockey. He was back in school. He was talking to you, which is so important. So you had a dialogue, and then he dipped back into it at one point. What was there something that triggered that? Like, if you could go back and change something, like, is there something that you would have done differently?
I feel like it kind of snuck back in. I think just my own belief. I think he just thought, well, I can drink beer and smoke weed and I'll be okay. And then I really couldn't tell you when exactly that, other things came back into the picture. But so they did.
It was definitely a case of self-medicating. Like, it wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
The party was over, is what I'm trying to say. This was definitely a matter of survival in his eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's jump ahead here and talk about the day that you got that phone call on January 11th, 2021. You mentioned to me that he was to be released. Was it that day or the next day?
He thought that a few times, though. And so I really wasn't sure, but he was pretty adamant that I'm going to get out January 11th. And I actually hadn't spoken to him since New Year's Day. I think we talked Christmas Eve and the 27th and then New Year's Day. And I hadn't heard from him. So I knew from previous experience that that meant he was probably, his phone calls had been taken away, or he was being punished for some sort of behavior or something that happened in there. And so, on the 11th, I was really high anxiety. I just could feel like something was wrong. I actually phoned. We had a phone account where I could leave him messages, and I phoned and I broke down. I was crying, which I never did because I was trying to be really strong for him and be happy on the phone and, encouraging. And then, looking back now, I would have been phoning probably right around the time he passed. I was waiting all day to hear from him and trying to keep my mind busy. And finally at 9:00, phone rang and it was a strange Edmonton number. And I thought, okay, this is him. It's him. Like, he got out.
Yeah.
And right away realized, no, it was an RCMP member from Edmonton, and he just asked my name. And then he confirmed my address, and he wanted to hang up right away, but I was pretty like, okay, I know this is about my son. What's going on? And he just said, I can't tell you on the phone. My first thought was probably there was a fight. He got hurt, something. He's in the hospital,
Was he
something
known?
went down.
Was he known to get in trouble on the inside?
I would say he was struggling to try and I'm flashing back to one phone call where I could hear other people in the background, and he said, I'm going to have to go fight this guy, Mom. And I'm like, what? No, don't fight. What are you doing? And he said, you don't understand. and I don't have a choice kind of thing. And then I was home watching Netflix series about people in jail to try and figure out what is the culture in there? What's going on? Why is he saying he has to fight? But yeah, I do think there is I don't really know. It's guessing, but he definitely felt like he had to survive in there. And so I know he got into a couple physical fights.
And there would be no communications between the center and yourself to let you know. None, hey.
They have never phoned me ever once. No.
So they showed up at your house, the RCMP.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there any empathy? Was there any offer of any services when they broke the news to you?
Actually, the RCMP member here in Terrace was very kind. I actually felt sorry for him because what a horrible thing to have to come and do, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, that can't be easy.
Yeah. It took actually 2 hours from the time I got called from Edmonton for him to come to my driveway. I met him out at the end of my driveway. I was literally waiting, like, what is going on? I knew something bad. And he let me get into his vehicle, and we sat and cried, and he told me he lost his nephew the same way. So I related to him human to human. He didn't feel like an RCMP member anymore, which was nice.
And I gotta say, and I say with caution, like there's a certain amount of beauty in that. That's, to sit with someone who can say, I know how it feels. Like there's just something about that just makes it easier, So I'm glad that it was him.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
So what did you do in the weeks following? Did you spring to action, or did you take time to grieve? Like what did that look like for you? How did you get through?
I remember I was asking him a lot of questions. I wanted answers right then. Like it just wasn't making any sense, because as soon as he said the word suicide, I said, no, that wasn't, which I'm sure is a normal reaction. But I just, the very next day, I think I was on the phone like 8 a.m. wanting to know, okay, who was in the room with him? Like, I didn't believe he did this to himself. I wanted to know who seen him, who was around him, and very quickly realized I was not going to be getting answers from them. Yeah.
So tell us about your experience. Like, did you reach out to any sort of peer support? Did you look for any like counseling or therapy, or like tell us a little bit about how you got through that and how you're okay now? Because clearly, I mean, there's we're joking and laughing and smiling, and the topic at hand isn't funny, but I would love, I'm sure there's lots of people out there who would like to know how you got through that.
And I look like I'm fine, but we put on a mask, and I'm generally happy. TJ was very much the same. He would have been finding ways to joke about this, and because it's super uncomfortable to talk about, obviously, and so humor is just the go-to to get through these hard things. But especially when he passed, being during COVID, of course, we didn't have a funeral. I think it was the rule at the time was you're allowed 10 people, and we just we didn't. And so I spent a lot of time alone, and for me, that's been good. Yeah, I definitely right away reached out to Mom Stop the Harm. Lady named Jenny Howard watched me ugly cry a few times into the iPad.
I'm sure.
Just what you said, it's very powerful to sit with people who can say, I know how you feel.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a different story, but we have this commonality. And I will say, when you're grieving your child, and it's substance use related, they call it disenfranchised grief. It's like, and I felt that right away because TJ was in what we call a jail. It felt like I'm supposed to just sit and hide in shame, and my personality, I guess that stubbornness, like, no, this is so wrong. I'm not going to hide in shame and be quiet about this. I selfishly, I mean, I need answers. And then the more I started to advocate, the more people connected with me who are in there right now, or who have been in there previous or in a different facility. And it's, yeah, learning all the things I've learned has helped me find my voice, which I'm still trying to do. This is all very out of character for me. Yeah, just, I can't not do this. So I feel like my reaction to grief has been advocacy, and talking about it, coming out of being silenced in shame, or fear of bringing shame to others because of where he was or what he was doing. Yeah.
Let's take another break here. We're going to hear from tonight's other sponsors, and then we will look at some more comments. And then I definitely want to talk about what you're doing now. So take another break, have a drink of water. We'll be right back.
The research tells us there's no safe amount of alcohol during pregnancy. It can be as little as 2 binge drinking episodes to have a child who is impacted by FASD. I'm referencing the Safe Canadian Drinking Guidelines, and they reference a binge drink as 4 or more drinks on one occasion. I would say kind of put that into perspective. Someone who doesn't know that they're pregnant, that's 4 beer on one occasion. Maybe that's a couple of glasses of wine. Those glasses of wine might be a little bit fuller than the average glass of wine. So maybe those 2 glasses of wine is actually equivalent to 4. FASD doesn't discriminate. It can happen to anyone.
All right.
So our first comment, excuse me, comes in from Gail Smith. Thank you for your comment, Gail. She says, TJ, I'm sorry, I'm going to cry. I'm sorry. TJ was a great kid. All who knew him loved him. He experienced several concussions while playing sports, and drugs helped him ease the pain.
Thanks, Gail.
Yeah.
And Unhooked Addictions and Wellness Coaching says, as an AC in jail, we would love to treat more people and give them the tools they needed, but we are only able basically to treat sentenced people. With so many people on remand, it makes it hard. Programming takes 5 to 6 weeks, but you can't start treatment if someone is getting out before the end of the programming. It's not that we don't want to help.
And I go ahead, Lana.
I was just going to say, I just actually recently learned that, and I wish I would have known that. When you're remanded, you don't have access to the things he was asking for. And right now in Canada, we have more people remanded than actually serving sentences. So that's a problem.
Yeah.
And I would say a high percentage of them are there because of substances and or mental illness.
Isn't it interesting how it seems as though if you're in a situation like this, you pretty much have to cop a criminal record in order to receive treatment?
Yeah.
We've got
Well, you pretty much have to plead guilty, not even take it to trial. Like you have to just plead guilty so that you can get the services that they offer within the institutions.
Before we get to Rob's comment here, I just wanted to remind our viewers to stick around to the end. We've got a powerful clip coming up from next week's guest, conversation I had with him earlier in the week. So stick around for that. There's a link at the bottom of the screen there that you can tap to learn more about him and to set a reminder. If you tap going, set a reminder, and Facebook will remind you so you don't miss out.
And our next comment comes in from Rob Gare. Thank you for your comment. It seems like people who are of age but still quite young may benefit from parental intervention. But 35-year-olds, for example, I'm not sure. Maybe there should be a window after 18 where parents can intervene, say maybe 5 years. There are lots of societal examples of where of-age teenagers are expected to be fully fledged on their 18th birthday, but not the day before, but may not be on their 18.
You know, and I felt like TJ was 23 when he passed away, and I didn't feel like emotionally he was. I felt like when the drug use started, he sort of stuck at that age almost.
Yeah. That's sort
So
of a common.
I mean,
that's sort of a common concept. That's and I can relate to. Like that's definitely there's some validity to what you're saying there, I think.
Yeah.
And Melanie Airy, thank you for your comment, says, my son Derek passed away August 30 from bronchopneumonia after 10 plus years of substance use disorder at age 25. After all those years of substances, I feel his poor body just couldn't fight something that should have or could have been treatable.
Was there ever any health challenges, Lana?
None. I'm lying. He had one. He had one. He had his arm. He had an abscess on his arm the year before he passed that led to 3 surgeries. I think it was sepsis. He almost lost his arm. But the reason I jumped with a reaction of none was because actually in the New Edmonton remand, when he got into a fight, he broke his skin, so they rushed out all these tests, of course, because if 2 people are fighting, and yeah, he had no disease, no health issues. You know, his body was perfectly healthy. He really, I mean, we'll never know, but I never didn't believe he couldn't recover and be healthy and well.
So tell us now, when we spoke earlier, last week, you mentioned now that you avoided the downtown area of your community because you couldn't everywhere you looked. You know, you saw the pain now. Tell us a little bit about that experience and tell us how you sort of overcame that, or at least learned to face that.
Yeah. At the time when TJ passed, I was actually working. I'm a massage therapist, but I took a casual position at our extreme weather shelter, and it was full on. TJ and I were talking about it because he was proud to know, oh, you're working down there. And I said, I want to learn more about this. I want to learn how to better communicate with you. And then he passed, and yeah, I couldn't even go near there. And I started driving the long way around. I couldn't go downtown. I just when I see someone struggling, I just see my child. I just see them. It's like what I was saying. I just see it in a whole new perspective now. And I know every one of them has a story. And anyway, I don't know exactly how many months went by, and I thought I have to just go connect with people and talk with them, and I have to face this trigger. So I did. I just started pulling up and getting out of my car and walking up to people and saying, "Hi, I'm Lana with Mom Stop the Harm, and I'm just checking to see if you're okay, if you need anything." And for a long time, most all of the people wouldn't ask me for anything because they were just probably trying to figure out what I was up to.
What are you, a cop?
Like they were, some of them sadly were really surprised I was coming to be kind. They were almost bracing for someone to tell them to get off the property, or, whatever they face every day. And then you could see the body language change. And then, now, I've connected with a few other people in my community here, some people with lived experience who do wellness and outreach for different organizations, and we've come together and we're building a peer network, or a substance users network. So we're just getting that going, and we meet every week where we pay people to come and share their stories, and we're just kind of in that beginning phase of planning some events here in our community, and
what kind
trying
of events?
to,
like fundraising events, or just community events to bring people together, or what?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
We're going to start talking about, obviously, International Overdose Awareness Day. Do a big event here. It'll be the 3rd year in Terrace, and some fundraising. Where people can maybe, they're asking a lot to learn some new skills, and so we're talking about having a barbecue and having the peers actually cook the food and clean up, and
So what kind of like, are you seeing? I guess, how does one meter success? Are you seeing any shifts in the perspective of the people with lived experience when it comes to approaching you or people that you work with regarding accessing services, or maybe they need some socks, or maybe they need whatever? Like, is it getting easier for them?
Yeah, well, what I'm seeing, I think we started meeting weekly end of February, so it's pretty new. But there's been days where like 30 people show up, and so I would say we've built trust. We're working on, basically, I said, even if all we do is come together and hold each other up in a space of no judgment, that's worth doing. And we're talking about creating a temp agency, so some peer-led employment opportunities, and just giving choices, because I know people feel really stuck in the situation.
So what you're doing is you're trying to create opportunities for people to succeed.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where can people reach you if they want to help in some way, or if they have questions about how they can start something like this on their own? Is there somewhere that people can find you?
Yeah. We just started a Facebook page, and the peers actually named our substance users group. It's a very long name. It's called Spirit Guides Under Northern Lights.
Okay, Donna's gonna see if she
users.
Donna's gonna see if she can find it here. We'll throw it in the chat so y'all can give them a follow or learn more about them.
we've abbreviated, so it kind of sounds like Signal Sun. It's SGNL Sun.
Okay. Sometimes
And
they pop
yeah,
up right
we
away.
would.
Sometimes they don't. If if we can't find it right now, we'll definitely try to find it here in a few minutes. So, but we're coming to the end, Lana. Before we look at next week's clip, you all don't log off yet. We still got more. But Lana, is there anything else that you'd like to say before we let you go tonight?
I think the biggest thing that I would like to say is if there's somebody listening and you're living with a mental illness, that's not a character flaw, and your substance use is not a moral failing. And if you're alive, there's still hope. You matter.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, Lana. Well, thanks so much for walking that path with us tonight. Thank you for bringing your strength to the platform and a lot of vulnerability. That takes a lot of courage. So thank you so much again. But I think we'll let you go, get back to your evening, and we'll see you again. Take care, my friend.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.
For me, the addiction wasn't so much about being fun or a party scene. It was me trying to deal with pain. So when I got introduced to marijuana and alcohol at a young age, it was instant relief for me. It moved on to opiates and painkillers and cocaine and meth. It damaged relationships, ripped me from my family, almost made me lose my kids and my wife. I lost jobs, started to just hate myself. I think when I was faced with just inevitable death and suicide, I didn't want that anymore. Even though it seemed like it was the only exit, I also knew it was like, that's not what I want.
Say, this is Hard Knocks Talks.